Unlike the previous year where it was not paid for and Social Security ran a deficit. Every single one of you seniors should have been screaming. But it was funny how you didn't hear AARP say anything about the payroll tax cut. Unemployment insurance. We said we cannot have 99 weeks of unemployment insurance. We pared it back to 59 weeks. We made sure it was paid for. We put in reforms in place. The sustained growth rate, the DOCS fix for Medicare recipients. We said we're going to have a 2-year extension on this. We said we're going to get the Keystone XL pipeline project going. We're going to make sure the EPA does not destroy our boiler systems. But what came back from the Senate? We're just going to do it for 2 months. And the rug got pulled from under us. And I got to tell you, I'm mad about that. Because if you study this thing, how can we do tax policy in 2-month increments in the United States of America? Nobody can run their business that way. But what's even more heinous is the fact that with this 2-month extension, the means by which we're going to pay for it is we're going to raise the fees on loan guarantees for people that are going through the government-sponsored enterprises, Fannie and Freddie. So if you want to go out and buy a home and use those entities, you're going to have to pay higher fees. We're going to do it on the backs of the American homeowners. Now, what's scary for me is that in the last couple of weeks, I've been going around and talking to different editorial boards. You sat there with the Sun Sentinel, they didn't even know how the 2-month payroll tax was being paid for. But what's even worse, people that are opinion writers here, they didn't even know that a person like Mahmoud Ahmadinejad is traveling through Latin America. You know what concerns me? Is that people don't want to tell the truth to the American people. People don't want the American people to be informed so they make the right type of decisions that we go forth. That's what has to happen. And in doing that, we have to show the contrast. Today, the United States of America owes more than it produces. Today, the United States of America is on its way to having the 4th consecutive year of $1 trillion plus deficits. Now I'm happy to see the unemployment number come down to 8.6 and 8.5. But let's do a careful analysis. There are a lot of people that have fallen off the rolls. A lot of people aren't looking. And also we're talking about the comparison of a seasonal bump. What's going to happen in February when all of these people that were hired in November, December are sent home? And if we continue to talk about how the economy is improving and all of these Americans come back out to start looking for work again, there are many people that believe the actual unemployment rate in the United States of America is more like 10.7%. We've got to tell the American people the truth. And what we have to do in telling you the truth is unleash your entrepreneurial spirit. Government cannot create jobs. Government cannot create wealth for the American people. But what government can do is set the parameters with predictable policies that will enable you to be successful. But once we make you successful, once we can get the prosperity back to the American people, once we can come back and understand and respect your rights of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, we got to keep you safe. And what the president said last week is not going to keep the American people safe. Alexander the Great had a fantastic quote that said, "I do not fear an army of lions if they were to be led by sheep, but I would fear an army of sheep if they were to be led by a lion." When you look at what is happening in our world today, with Iran, with North Korea, with China, with Venezuela, with Russia, think about what occurred on Christmas Day in Nigeria, where parishioners coming from Christmas Day services out of a Catholic church were killed for one reason, because they were Christian. People are out there that don't like us because we exist. The battlefield is not just far, far away, thousands of miles. What happened today in Tampa? And don't forget, 11 some odd years ago, Sheriff, who was learning how to fly airplanes? Not take off, not land, but who was learning how to fly airplanes right here in Broward County? The world is not as safe as we want it to be. A year ago, everyone was celebrating this thing called the Arab Spring, talking about how great it was and democracy was coming to the Middle East and coming all across North Africa and the Maghreb. And today, in Egypt, 60 to 65% of the control of the Egyptian parliament will be the Muslim Brotherhood and radical Islamic groups. And the same is occurring in Morocco, the same is occurring in Tunisia, the same is occurring in Libya, all across. We have got to start making hard decisions. And saying that we are going to correct the fiscal irresponsibility of Washington, D.C. on the backs of our military is a cowardly decision. 62% of the budget in the United States of America is spent on mandatory spending. The net interest on the debt, Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. You can cut the defense down to the bare bones. That is only 19% of our budget. How are we going to look at the men and women who are asking to keep us safe, keep this country safe? We're going to turn our backs on them and give them less, but ask them to do more. And I've been on the other side. And I'm sure Sheriff Lamberti and all of these deputies in Broward County know exactly what I'm talking about. Every time government screws up the fiscal situation, be it at the local level with the counties or whatever, or the United States, the first people they look to cut at the local level is law enforcement, and at the national level, military. And as soon as you do that, there's somebody else out there that's checking you out. Because criminals are still going to be watching to see where his weaknesses are. And there are bad guys all across the world waiting for us to show the weakness that we are showing. And we have to show that contrast in believing in a strong national defense and protecting the American people. So what does it come down to in 2012? It comes down to the truth. It comes down to standing on constitutional conservative principles. It comes down to the American people reading the Declaration, reading the Federalist Papers, reading the Constitution day by day by day. It comes down to understanding what's the importance of this Supreme Court decision that's going to be coming up here later on in this year. How many people know what the Commerce Clause is? You got to read it. Because if you read and understand the Commerce Clause, where it talks about the federal government can regulate trade and commerce between states, between the United States and foreign nations, or between the United States and tribal nations. You think about the precedent that will be established if that individual mandate is ruled constitutional, that says that the federal government can tell an individual American citizen what type of private sector commodity they must buy. So where does it end? You got to buy a Nissan Leaf. Well, a Chevy Volt, and hopefully it won't blow up in your driveway. We will tell you what type of food that you have to purchase, or even better, what type of food you can buy. How many people know about this land case, this before the Supreme Court right now, with individual American citizens who have bought a home, and the EPA is talking about fining them $100 million because they say the land is a wetlands. This is the America in which we're living in. Now you can talk about the dysfunction in Washington, D.C. That dysfunction in Washington, D.C. is a reflection of the dysfunction of our society. Because you are the ones that are voting and sending people up there. And you got to try them, and you got to make sure that they are going to do what is best for you, not for special interests and not for self-interest. I don't want to stay in Washington, D.C. for the rest of my life. What I do want to do is get my country back on the right track. And let me close by saying this. If I'm not doing my job, then explain to me why the hell I'm the #1 target for the Democrat Party. And I don't mind being the #1 target.